A lot of people are wondering, how far can you actually go on an e-bike? This past week, we took our Current Plus as far as it can go. Today, we're gonna be talking about what went into it, what we learned from it, and how you can follow along at home with your bike. So on the stock Current Plus battery, I made it 91 miles. So from Poughkeepsie to 189th Street in Manhattan.
91.8 miles here at Leaf Life, and we made it back to Manhattan.
That was on pedal assist 1 with an average miles per hour of 14.2. It was a moving time of 7 hours and 19 minutes with a total time of 9 hours and 39 minutes. We took a nice little lunch at a pizzeria. Elevation gain, 3,143.
3,000 foot elevation gain isn't nothing. That's like an actual amount of climbing. It's more than I would expect. And 91 miles is more than I would expect too out of that battery. That's very impressive.
So just a quick breakdown on kind of the path we chose. It was 94% bike lane. That's not just alongside of a road, that's a separate protected bike lane. So that was awesome. Really allowed Connor and I to hunker into the ride, not worry about cars, just worry about the miles. Once we got back towards the Bronx, it kind of loses bike lane and then picks up again in Manhattan. We could have done a bunch of laps in Central Park, but instead we wanted to have a little bit of a prettier ride, but following the Empire State Trail seemed to be the easiest and comes down the West Side Highway right to the Priority office down here in Tribeca.
Yeah, the Empire Trail and the South County Trailway, it's a ride that a lot of people do, and we've done numerous times. We know it's a great route, it's a nice ride, and it's a real-world application for taking your e-bike out and going to ride a distance like this. I think some people would say that like you can kind of go any distance on an e-bike if you pedal, but I think what 14 miles per hour average shows is that you were moving pretty quickly. What did you feel like the amount of effort you were putting in was?
In terms of ride feel, it felt like pedal assist 1 was taking all of the weight away from the e-bike. So it felt like I was riding an acoustic bike with a bit more pickup. I definitely felt the assist there, but I was putting power down the pedals. It wasn't grinding, it was definitely the easiest century I've done, and I wasn't sore the next day, just tired from being on the bike saddle for 8 hours. Even when Connor and I were riding, we were saying, oh, if this would be great if you wanted to do a long ride with someone who didn't necessarily have that distance in them. They could just pop on the Current and easily keep up with you in terms of speed and distance.
Yeah, like 14 mile per hour average is like decently quick for a seasoned rider on a acoustic bike. That's faster than I think a lot of people have done centuries, and I've done slower centuries than that for sure. Were there times where you felt like it was particularly helpful to have pedal assist? I mean, did it help you more on hills per se, or did it feel like it was better off the line than doing a normal century?
I think the biggest place I noticed it was in the headwinds. I feel like when I'm on an acoustic bike, I'm shifting down thinking it'll make the headwind easier, but with the weight of the Current and the pedal assist, it just felt like it was kind of cutting through or making it easier with the headwind, which felt great. Connor was next to me on a Gemini, and I could see that he was feeling the wind.
I'm fucking freezing, dude. Like, cold's really getting to me. Cold and wind. Really cold. It's windy. Ugh, yeah.
When I obviously felt it, but I definitely felt like I was kind of cutting through it or charging through it a bit more.
I was surprised. I was surprised by how far you went. I was estimating something like 70 or 75 miles. And you didn't quite have ideal conditions. Ideal conditions for getting maximum battery range is kind of like, 60, 70 degree ambient temperature, a tailwind, a downhill elevation change. But, you actually had a headwind, it was pretty cold, it was in the 40s.
Yeah, 45 degrees average for the day.
Yeah, and you had a decent amount of elevation. So I was not expecting you to get quite so far. But, it's a 720 watt hour battery, and you were in the lowest pedal assist mode. You did have the advantage of having aero bars on the bike to cheat the wind a little bit there.
Thank you, Redshift.
Yeah, and you pedaled. So you were contributing a fair amount of effort. So I think you can see that the more you pedal, the further you're going to get. I think that's kind of obvious. But the more effort you contribute to the bike, the longer the battery is going to last. So I'm afraid you're going to have to do it again in pedal assist 2.
It should take me less time. So I felt like I was putting a normal amount of power, pedaling in a normal fashion, but is there an optimal power to put down for a torque sensor?
The way that the controller of the bike interprets the input from the torque sensor is there's basically a minimum threshold power for activating the power from the bike. So you have to put in a minimum amount of pressure on the pedals. And with that minimum amount of pressure comes the lowest level of pedal assist that you can get within that pedal assist level. So if you're in pedal assist 1, that's basically the least amount of power the bike's going to generate. And then you have a range. And the range is different based on each pedal assist level. It basically, the headroom on how much power you can get from the bike grows. So, when you put in the maximum amount of power that the torque sensor can take, you get the maximum amount of power for that pedal assist level. So, like with pedal assist 1, if you put in maximum power, you're not getting maximum power from the bike because you're limiting the amount of power that the bike can put out. So is there an optimal amount of power to put in? I think you wrote it the right way and put in a comfortable amount of power. I mean, this is the benefit of a torque sensor because it delivers power that's proportional to how much power you're putting in. I mean, I think, the optimal amount of power is the most power that you can comfortably put in and still go the distance, which is true for any bike ride, really, like if you're trying to do it in a certain amount of time or as fast and efficiently as you can and make it. So is there a most efficient amount of power to put in? I'm not really sure what the answer is either because I think there's a lot of variables in that too. There's the efficiency of the tires rolling on the ground at various speeds and how that changes. There's, the aerodynamic efficiency. So I think there's a lot more factors at play. But when it comes down to it, riding at a comfortable cadence, putting in a comfortable amount of power is going to get you there. This may also be one of the advantages of having a torque sensor on the bike because the torque sensor inspires you to pedal more or really pedal harder, right? Because if you have a cadence sensor, you don't really get that feedback where the harder you pedal, the more power you get from the bike. So, you get this natural feeling and response from the bike with a torque sensor that encourages you to turn those pedals over harder to power the bike, to power itself and move you along. So I think that's a more appropriate choice for a ride like this where you're trying to get the most performance out of the situation. Did you change the pedal assist mode?
No.
Not until the end?
Yeah, not until the end. And I didn't even touch the throttle until the end. But yeah, I'm sure if I was in level 2 on some of the climbs, I would have done them faster. But being in 1, it didn't feel impossible, even in the lowest gear. With the assist especially, I feel like I just got into the lowest gear, I could feel the assist, and I would just chew away. It almost felt like a pinion, like granny gear, like you just get to that low gear and just kind of sit and turn. And also just like anecdotally about the bike, getting out of the saddle with the bars so high, having them by my chest and standing felt so comfortable to climb.
I guess that kind of reflects the mechanical advantage that you get from having a mid-drive motor that takes advantage of the gears. Since the motor sits ahead of the gears in the rear wheel, then both you and the motor can take that gearing advantage. So dropping it into a lower gear means that it multiplies the torque of the motor to allow you to just, basically use the minimum to get up that hill. So that's pretty cool. There's no doubt that using higher pedal assist levels would drain the battery faster. It's just kind of how it is, right?
Name of the game. Okay, so I came up short on the official 100 on the battery. 91, I was pretty close. Do you think that there's anything in the setup that I could tweak to make me get closer to 100 or hit it?
So that's just about a 10% difference. 10% can be pretty significant, but it may be possible with the right conditions. I think if you went with a slightly lighter setup, I know you had that spare battery on the back, and maybe some other spare items on the bike. So if you really strip that thing down, you can get a little bit of an advantage there. You had the aero bars on there, but maybe if you dropped them down a bit lower, you could get more aerodynamic. And aerodynamics is probably the most important thing on a long ride at determining how efficient you are. We see that in professional time trial cycling and triathlon, where they do absolutely everything to get as aerodynamic as possible, really low positions, skin suits, aero helmets. So I think aerodynamics itself could probably account for another 10% of efficiency over the course of the ride. But then there's also stuff like rolling resistance. So having a tubeless setup on there, thinner tire, slightly more efficient setup. I think that could do it. And then slightly more optimal temperature and wind conditions and less elevation. I think it's definitely possible. I'm not saying you should get a time trial helmet, but maybe you should.
Maybe. I think even on the aero bars, I was probably using them less than 10% of the time.
Okay.
Just because when I started out, I probably didn't use them or I would just like play around on them for the first 20 miles, but I didn't really use them till the last 20. So I'm sure if I was in them the whole time, there would have been a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, reducing your frontal area can do a lot for aerodynamics. And with the speeds we're talking about, even 15 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, wind resistance is the biggest force resisting you.
What do you think most riders could learn from this experience now that I'm done with it?
What did you learn from the experience?
The current rips. It's a great bike. I knew that a little bit before, but now I really know it. 100, it's not as scary as people might think. It's just a lot of hours on the saddle, and the Empire State Trail is great.
That's a good takeaway. I think that the current can do more miles than we expected even. And it doesn't even require really outlandish conditions to go ahead and achieve a high mileage ride on the bike. So I think most people can be pretty confident that the bike is going to go the distance for them. If they want to go a little bit further, using a lower pedal assist level and pedaling more is a surefire way to get you more miles out of the battery range.
The main reason that we came into this was we've had some tests before on the Current Plus and how far it could go, but to really see how far it could go in one day on one battery till death, we wanted to see, and we saw, and it went far.
Yeah, we can run the numbers as much as we want, but nothing really compares to a real-world test. And to be honest, not a lot of us have had the patience to sit in the saddle in pedal assist 1 all day, so we made Will do it. But we know that riders are out there using the bike for stuff like this. We've seen a bunch of people at Ragbri using currents. So we know that there's a need, and a need to know kind of what the actual functional range of the bike is. So we took this as an opportunity to really see what it can do. When we're actually trying to hit a long range, hit a high mileage number in real world conditions, without going out of the way to make alterations to the bike or going out in a skin suit and a TT helmet or whatever. I saw a comment about how you can hit 100 miles on any e-bike. You can also just pedal the bike there with no pedal assist, absolutely, yeah. Or you can reduce the power so much that the battery lasts indefinitely practically because you're not using very much of it. But I think it's important to know that we used the stock programming of the bike for this test. And Pedal Assist 1 is not nothing. Pedal Assist 1 is enough so that the bike does a fair amount of work. Will called it enough to make up for the weight of the bike and then a little bit. And I think that's like a good way to sum it up. Like it's an actual practical amount of pedal assist.
The Will Do It actually got picked up by Electric. Thank you, Micah. And there's been a pretty interesting discussion in the comments on what people look for in an e-bike, what their long distance or short distance rides look like. So I think it's most important to understand your use case. If you have a 100-mile commute every day, that's one thing. But if you have a grocery getter that you might need to do a little bit of weekend fun with some more miles on, these are all things to think of when picking out an e-bike.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear what people's use cases are and what their mileage targets are and what their ride experience targets are. And clearly, Will going out and doing 91.8 miles isn't relevant to everybody's experience specifically. But I think it indicates that just about any rider can have confidence in the battery life of this bike, for a given ride distance.
Make sure to ask us your questions about the Current Plus or any of our other e-bikes down below.